Hey, how you guys doing? My camera is doing some weird thing because I had to bend the legs on the tripod to make it stand up straight. But yeah, that should be pretty good. At least the camera won't fall over. I said I was going to do some videos on Ukrainian stuff, and that's something that I was thinking about doing among other things, so I decided I would just do that. And I don't know if you guys remember me making a video about Ukraine and the war that is still ongoing over there. But what's crazy is I've since, like I said in the most recent video about this topic, I've changed my opinion on it. So I kind of want to go over some of the things that, changed in that time since I made the first original videos. So let me just start with some background. Let's start, there. So what happened is Russia invaded Ukraine. And at first I thought that it was not a bad thing. At first I thought the Russians were the good guys. And I've since changed my opinion. So let's talk about why. So what this all started with was a protest movement called the Euromaidan, or the Euro Plaza. Basically, Maidan means like plaza, or like a square. So like with the Arab Spring, you had the Tahrir Square where all the protests were happening. So this is almost like the Arab Spring. In fact, I should make a whole video about the Arab Spring, but that's definitely on the to-do list. So it started with those protests, and it was the Ukrainians wanted their pro-Russian president out of office, and some people genuinely liked being part of Russia, so they didn't want him out. They wanted him to stay. The people that wanted him out eventually got their wish because he fled the country, and he fled all the way to his beloved Russia, into the arms of Mother Russia, I guess you could say. And that was seemingly the end of it. But what happened is the Russians didn't take too kindly to their man being scared away. So their people in Ukraine started agitating for separatism. It was basically non-Ukrainians, Russians who lived there who wanted to actually take chunks of Ukraine and split off from Ukraine and join the Russian Federation, which is kind of crazy. And there's a lot of reasons for that I gotta go into, but more topics just keep popping up. You see, that's what this channel is all about. It's topics creating topics. So that background. Basically, I summed it up. What I would be reading here is what I summed up. And then, so the Euromaidan, the Russian invasion of Crimea and the Donbass region, which is the Luhansk, and what's the other one? Donetsk and Luhansk. So those two oblasts of Ukraine got invaded. Yeah, Russian soldiers with no identifying markings began to invade the Ukrainian territory of Crimea and fully controlled the peninsula by late March. Russia annexed Crimea in March after a widely condemned and disputed referendum. So this is like a pattern of behavior. This is what they do. Pro-Russian protests followed in the Ukrainian cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. Separatists proclaimed the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. The war in the Donbass began in April 2014 when armed Russian paramilitaries, which would later turn out to be the Wagner Group. So I think it doesn't say Wagner, but the Grupo Wagner, and the Ukrainian military began operation against them. Russia covertly supplied the separatists with troops, tanks, and artillery. The International Criminal Court judged that the war was a national and international armed conflict, and the European Court of Human Rights judged that Russia controlled the DPR. Speaking of Europe and the European Union, that's who the Ukrainians wanted to join up with. They wanted to be closer to the European Union rather than the Russians. So the annexation of Crimea and the Donbass War sparked a new wave of Russian nationalism. Analyst Vladimir Sokor called Putin's 2014 speech following the annexation a manifesto of Greater Russia and irredentism. Putin began referring to it as Novorossiya, or New Russia, a former Russian imperial territory that covered much of southern Ukraine. Yeah, it's kind of boring, but it just shows my point that they did this artificially. So there was a military buildup near Ukraine's borders in March and April of 2021, and again in Russia and Belarus from October 2021 onward. Russia said it was only holding military exercises. Members of the government, including Putin, reportedly denied having plans to invade Ukraine. So they were doing this the whole time and just hiding their hands, so to speak. After the start of the invasion, Ukrainian and Western analysts tentatively assessed that Putin seemed to have assumed that the Russian armed forces would be capable of capturing Kiev within days. This assessment eventually led to the commonly reached conclusion that taking Kiev in 3 days had been the original objective or expectation of the invasion. The narrative of the planned 3 days capture of Kiev was reinforced by statements by Alexander Lukashenko and Margarita Simonyan, editor-in-chief of the Russian state-controlled broadcaster Russia Today, or RT. On 2nd of March, the Security Service of Ukraine repeated the claim following the release of a video showing the captured Russian soldier claiming that the unit was sent into Ukraine with food supplies for only 3 days. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of bold and ambitious. Documents found included inside Russian tanks mentioned how the special military operation would conclude in 10 days. Ukraine also captured flagship tanks used in parades along with military parade uniforms, meaning they were expecting a quick victory for sure. Putin himself asserted back in 2014 that Russian forces could take Ukraine in 2 weeks. It's been almost a few years by now, so 3 days after the invasion began, RIA Novosti, a Russian state news agency, mistakenly published an article entitled Russia's Coming and the New World, prepared in advance in anticipation of a Russian victory. It announced that Ukraine had returned to Russia. On the 21st of February, Putin announced that Russia recognized the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic as independent states. The following day, Russia announced that it was sending troops into the territories as peacekeepers. So they're really they're really playing around with the idea of an invasion. They weren't really committing to it. So the invasion began at dawn on the 24th of February. It was the biggest attack on a European country and first full-scale war in Europe since World War II. Russia launched a simultaneous ground and air attack. Russia did not officially declare war. So this is just how it started, and the fact that the Ukrainians wanted to be part of the European Union totally changed my perspective, because if a country wants to associate with whoever they want to, I totally believe they should be allowed to. And the fact that they got the Russian glazing president out of office kind of tells me that they kind of earned it. They should have gotten him out and done whatever they wanted to do. The new leadership of the country should have been able to make their own decisions, but so it's pretty simple. I also have a little bit of personal investment because I once had a prop made for this channel that came from a Ukrainian company. I'm kind of a fan of a Ukrainian YouTuber named Super Sus. And, it'd be nice if he doesn't get killed in a Russian rocket attack. If I'm going to say that, it would also be nice if the company that made the particular prop for me doesn't get blown up either. So it would also just be good for the Ukrainian people, and that's who I totally am on their side. I don't really back the government, but I believe that at least the people deserve to have peace, and I don't think the Russians are in the right at all. Plus, the language is really cool. I'll be real with you. The language, this is an interesting. Ukrainian has an interesting history. It goes back to Ruthenian, and even the language of Belarus is basically similar to this. So it's really cool to see the similarity. Even Russian came from the Ruthenian language. So a lot of interesting stuff, and I just wanted to do a quick one. I'm probably going to be making a lot more videos. I'm going to trying to be consistent is the hardest thing to do when it comes to YouTube. For me, it's hard because when I get home every day, it's like, because I go to work, I come home, and it's like, I get tired, I don't really want to do much, but kind of force myself to do this, so I'm hoping to make this easier for myself, get more used to it. And I'm hoping you guys enjoy it, so stick around. Thank you. See you in the next one.